This is a shocking and a bit gruesome, folks. So the vaccine mobsters, the Bill Gates, the uh, Albert Bourla, the Anthony Fauci's, have always tried to innovate ways to get you on board with the big pharmaceutical agenda. You saw what happened during COVID. Saw what happened. All the other initiatives, the monkeypox, the avian flu strains, that's what they claimed the whole ostrich farm is about, but not revealing the fact that they're culling the ostriches that may be beneficial to create antibodies that could deter people away from big pharmaceuticals. And now, this alarming thing, this is coming from Newsweek, where they said USDA to airdrop rabies vaccines into 6 states. What? What? So, 6 states within the United States is going to be bombarded by rabies vaccines? How is that? How is that allowed? How is that possible? How is that okay? That we're going to send a bunch of flyers over these 6 states to just drop a bunch of pharmaceutical gobbledygook to feed animals in 6 states. And of course, they're able to do this because, animals can't give consent. And if it happens to infect a human being, well, that's just coincidence. That's just nature. That's just how it's supposed to be, right? That's uses they. So it says the U.S. Department of Agriculture will be airdropping rabies vaccines into 6 states over the course of a month, continuing a process that started in August this year in other states. Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia will receive the vaccines. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services distributes rabies vaccines as part of a nationwide effort to stop the spread of rabies among various animals to protect public and animal health. Newsweek has contacted USDA's APHIS outside of regular working hours via email for comment. They said rabies is a viral disease that can be deadly to humans, affecting the nervous system and leading to severe brain damage if they didn't receive medical care before symptoms start. It is spread to people and pets through the bites and scratches of an infected animal, and the first symptoms may include flu, weakness, discomfort, fever, headache, as well as a prickling sensation at the site of the wound before turning to a more severe disease after around 2 weeks. Animals that typically carry rabies are bats, raccoons, skunks, and foxes. Nearly 3 in 4 Americans live in a community where animals carry rabies. That contacted with infected bats is the leading cause of rabies deaths in the United States. What is it with bats? What is it with bats? Are people just like biting the heads off it like Ozzy Osbourne? I don't understand this obsession that, I understand bats exist, but this idea that, people are going to get infected by rabies because they're close to an infected bat, like, it doesn't make sense. It's so absurd. It's so cringeworthy to even think about this. That they're just going to airdrop a bunch of this gobbledygook, chemical concoctions that may or may not, help with the rabies outbreak that apparently is happening, even though rabies existed, way beforehand, many, many decades ago. Even just the thinking of rabies reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where Elaine got bit by a dog and she was foaming at the mouth. But, rabies has always existed. It's always existed. And they always tell you if you get infected or you get bit by a dog, you go to emergency or you go to urgent care and you get a tetanus shot. That's how it's always been the case. It's always been like that. So why all of a sudden now are they saying it's such an outbreak that we have to bombard 6 states with this chemical concocted food so that animals can ingest it to protect humans? Like, it doesn't make sense. There's no logical sense in this decision making. Unless you are someone that wants to infect the rest of the population with your chemical concoctions to make people sicker, to make people iller and weaker and whatnot, which is something that, these heinous minds have always contributed when it comes to big pharmaceuticals. They don't want you to get better. They just want you to keep in this subtle state where you're strong enough to maintain yourself, but not strong enough to go against the big pharmaceuticals or the establishment. They want you, weak against that, but strong enough to, maintain the gears, as they say. Um, so it says in October, APHIS will be distributing hundreds of thousands of oral rabies vaccines known as Rabril VRG. Sounds like an android. Sounds like a Star Wars thing. As baits coated in fish meal, attracted and packaged in 2-inch plastic sachets with the aim of preventing the spread of raccoon rabies to Americans and their pets. The vaccines will be distributed across rural areas by airplane, in suburban and urban areas by helicopter and vehicle across Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. The baits are safe for many animals, including domestic dogs and cats, but while humans and pets cannot get rabies from contact with the baits, it is advised that they should leave them undistributed. If dogs consume a number of baits, they may experience a temporal upset stomach, but the USDA said there are no long-term risks to the animals. For people, it is advised that if they come in contact with the baits, they immediately wash their contact area with warm soap and water. If Americans find bait in an area where raccoon is unlikely to go, such as on their lawn or their driveway, they may move them to an area with thicker cover so as long they wear gloves or use a towel to pick up and move bait. So I'm just conflicted of all this. And I feel like this is just another scam. This is another, pandemic situation. Like, oh, all of a sudden rabies is this infectious disease, even though rabies has existed many, many decades, long time now. Pet owners, you can get the rabies shot for your dogs and your cats and whatnot to protect them. Any human that gets bit by a ravenous animal, they go to urgent care, they go to the hospital, they get, shots to treat it and immunity from it. So why exactly they need to do this is very uncertain. It doesn't make sense. It really does not make sense that they need to airboard a bunch of these concocted baits into these areas where they claim that the rabies outbreak is occurring. At the same time, they're trying to make the defense that, well, if your pet goes towards it, it's okay, safe for them. If you get contacted with this, the best thing you do is wash your hands frequently. And somehow this is going to protect, the rabies outbreak. Like, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. And they're just allowing to go for this. They're just allowing to have this occur because apparently rabies is the new disease talk of the town. Like, it started with COVID. Then they said monkeypox was a thing. Then they went to avian flu. Even though avian flu 20 years ago, there was an outbreak and it wasn't as major apparently as it is now. They didn't have to cull a bunch of ostriches, which now they're calling ostriches, as we know, because the ostriches in BC contain antibodies that are vital for scientific development to treat people with avian flu, so they won't have to rely on these heinous pharmaceutical giants that don't care about health. And now this. Now apparently rabies is such a big thing that they need a bunch of military planes and vehicles to distribute this in hopes it's going to decrease the rabies outbreak. I didn't realize it was an outbreak. I didn't realize that was a thing. And it just doesn't make sense because we've always had rabies. We've always had this thing that happened and people were able to treat it accordingly. Just like I never understood the measles outbreak. And if you go back to a show called The Brady Bunch, they did a whole episode about measles and how children used to get measles. And all it was, no different than the flu. You stayed home and got better. You had natural immunity. Now all of a sudden, the measles is such a deadly thing that we need to inject concoctions into your children, more concoctions into your children, instead of letting the human body do what it does best. That's natural immunity that builds up immunity to protect from certain diseases. That's why when you have the flu or the cold, the best thing you can do is rest and build up your immunity so it can fight against those symptoms, which is apparently the worst thing the pharmaceutical giants want you to do. That's why they don't believe in natural immunity. That's why during COVID, it never existed. They told you it was not a thing. Natural immunity, a thing that's been around since human beings, apparently doesn't exist. So all of this kind of just reminds me of nefarious minds like Bill Gates. Because that's what this plan sounds like to me. It sounds like another Bill Gates, Albert Bourla, Anthony Fauci, all these criminal syndicates coordinating together to do more harm to people and the population. And you remember Bill Gates, who's not only nefarious with the health industry and having the patents for vaccines and then able to cash out on, mass immunization, even though it didn't immunize anybody. He's also one of the top agricultural buyers in the world. He has the most farmland per capita they bought out. And what is he going to do with that farmland? Is he going to be Mr. Green Thumb and actually care about crops and building organic, stable farms? No. He bought the farmland because he says with cows, you can vaccinate them. Change the genetics. Billionaire who owns more U.S. farmland than anyone else says the path to climate and innovation runs through genetically modified livestock. Gates Boviar, $89 million in adoption grants. So this NGO, part of the Gates Foundation, they're buying up this farmland to inject organic livestock so that your cattle, your chicken, which are two of the most consumed proteins on earth, are going to be injected with this chemical concoction to change the genetics. And they're telling you it's for the benefit of climate change. Something that never existed beforehand. Now we're going to inject these poisonous concoctions into your cattle, into your livestock, to protect us from the planet. And here's him discussing this on some sort of business panel. Like, just how nefarious this sounds. What he's saying here.
Because the sources of emissions are so broad, we need deep innovation in many, many areas. Over in the agricultural space, rice is a huge source of emissions, and there's new ideas about genetics and direct seeding. With cows, you can vaccinate them.
I love it. I love how they bring up the graphic, reducing the emissions from rice and cows. And they don't bring up the infographic. They don't bring any details on how much emissions that actually transmits. Because cows and livestock contribute about this much. Maybe even less than that. But you know what causes more emissions? Private jets, big yachts, blowing up a natural gas pipeline in the ocean, the ultra-militarism that's going around the world. Does Bill Gates ever talk about that? Hell no. Hell no. None of these environmentalists that claim to protect the planet and the environment do any of that. Which shows how phony these guys are. This guy, Bill Gates, who barely finished college, who doesn't know how to program, doesn't know anything about medicine, doesn't know anything about agriculture, doesn't know anything about farmland, is lecturing people about how he needs to buy up these farms, these generational farms that have been around for eons, away from families that actually know a thing or two about the environment. They know about the climate change and whatnot, because their profession is the most ecological profession on earth. They have to sell off to this guy, this schmuck that wants to inject these harmful chemicals into the livestock that's going to contribute to the poisons inside of you. So this is nefarious. This is nefarious. This is how they're going to inject you with these concoctions without your consent, because it's going into the livestock. And you know, cows can't consent. But of course, you go to the grocery store, you buy this meat from this farm that Bill Gates owns, and guess what? Now you got the poison. So now you got it without your consent.
And change the genetics. And so I'd say there's probably 20 areas that if you want to help in climate innovation, these things are begging, because
it's just so crazy. And I believe, I believe that's the same Bovier. I believe that is the same company and the same chemical that the Danish farmers that we showed in another segment are being told by the governments that they had to put into their cattle. And guess what? Their cows are dying. It's not just stopping their farts. They're completely dead. So explain to me how any of this is beneficial to the planet. How any of this is benefiting agriculture, is benefiting food, is benefiting you, is benefiting animals. How is any of this good on any of those areas? Coming from a schmuck like him, who should be behind bars. This is a criminal mastermind. And because he is the ultra wealthy billionaire he is, and able to just buy him his media coverage and do stupid interviews like this. Oh, you know, it's good for the planet. It's good for the environment. All the emissions are coming back from cows. You know, as people are acknowledging, you know, you are the carbon they want to reduce. That's what all this is about. They want to reduce the population. Bill Gates said that. That's what it sounds like to me. And that is sinister. That sounds like terrorism. Does that sound like terrorism? You're a wealthy billionaire going on stage talking about how the world's overpopulated and coming up with these sinister concoctions to kill off people for your own political or psychological purposes. I believe that falls under the definition of terrorism. But he's allowed to get away with it because he just buys up companies. He buys up corporations. He's a monopolist. He can buy up governments. He can buy up the world and do this sinister, maniacal crap. Here's this guy, Johnny Midnight, saying American voters, Democrats, are planning on force medicating you through your food. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is 100% real. There are mechanisms to get vaccines into your system through your stomach. Now, I would argue it's not just Democrats. It's the establishment. It's also Republicans. Because while you have someone like RFK Jr., who is pledging, you know, Maha in some respects, you still got corporations, you still got Monsanto, you still got all these big agri monopolies that are being bought off by Bill Gates, that are being bought off by the pharmaceutical agencies to do this. And not much is really being done to prevent more of this. Not much is really being done. We're not having major lawsuits against Monsanto. And it's just causing more of a wreck to average people. And this is deeply going against you. Because this is the food that you're eating. This is the food at your grocery store, your butcher, at restaurants. And they're just giving the leadway for this because money talks and capitalism works in favor for the people that own capital. And apparently it's Bill Gates, being the monopolist, that's able to buy up all this farmland from generational farmers that have been growing food for since their families existed. And here's a video here of one of the whistleblowers, one of the farmer whistleblowers, acknowledging this and how sinister all this is.
Up to the big ag, big pharma conglomerate. House, this is one of the most corrupt things I've ever seen in my life. They are putting this stuff in our food. They're not telling us about it. And what about informed consent? What about Nuremberg? I mean, you can't give people medicine without doing that, but they're using loopholes in the federal law to get away with this. Our only way to know what's in this food is to pass a bill like this. Guys, this is caused and died suddenly. And by the way, we know now, I've got a paper talking about using milk, ingestible. We've got ingestible. One of the things that everybody said, well, you know, it'll break down in the stomach, it won't matter. That's not true. I've got the science, I've got the papers, I've got the documents. They have developed mechanisms to get this through the digestive system. We don't know what it works on entirely. We don't know how, we don't have all the information. But what I can say, absolute certainty, there are mechanisms to get vaccines into your system through your stomach. There are ingestible vaccines. They can do it. We don't know all the details yet, but what we do know is that this is a big deal.
So there you have it. I mean, this is not conspiracy theory, y'all. We have to get up. We have to wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. All right? So you guys, make sure you share this video. Make sure you're contacting your congressman. If you live in another state and this is, you know, make sure you send the bill that we have to your congressman and let them know. You guys, we have to get involved with these politics. We have to. We just have to. Right? Because they're weaponizing the politics, and we're just saying don't be involved in politics, or don't talk about the politics. And that is really going to put us in the trick bag. And I don't think you're going to like where that ends up. In total, 100% tyranny. Okay? And parents, please start parenting your children. Moms, please get back home with the kids. Everyone start trying to live off of one income. Right? That's the only way we're going to win, is if we take our families back, okay? Make sure if you guys, you know, are new around here, you hit that thumbs up, right? Make sure you subscribe to our channel if you're not subscribed, and leave a comment down below if you even had any idea about any of this stuff, right? Comment down below. And we'll see you guys on the next video.
So, there you go. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. And I wanted to show that because it's in relation to what we just read about the USDA and these rabies vaccine. This is their way to medically induce you, to sign you up with these experimental, you know, concoctions without your consent. There's a loophole to this because now, oh, we give it to animals. Animals can't consent. And it just so happens that animal is something you consume. Ergo, you're going to get injected. Ergo, you are now with that poison, even though you have no idea about this. That is sinister. That is sinister. And it makes me think of, you know, there's an article. I wish I had it in the slides here. In Russia. You know, a lot of people talk about Russia and Vladimir Putin and just how awful it is over there and make up all these, you know, weird conspiracies and fear-mongering stories. Do you know in Russia, it's actually illegal to genetically modify food? They consider it an act of terrorism. I thought that was crazy that that's not a thing here. I thought that's crazy that no other countries are willing to do that. Like, that seems like a no-brainer. That, hey, organic food should be organic food. You grow in the soil, you grow it from a crop, you raise your livestock. It should not be altered in any way. But it seems like we're doing the exact opposite. So while Russia has these laws where you can't genetically modify food because they define that as terrorism, you're altering the food that goes into people in some cases that could kill them or do harmful damage to them. Makes sense. We're doing the exact opposite. We're doing the exact opposite. We're killing off our people. We're injecting these harmful chemicals in our food system. And in cases here in Canada, we showed you how cloned meat is going to be replacing organic livestock. And who knows, that cloned meat or the lab synthetic meat is also going to be incorporated with this junk. Because who's manufacturing it? Who's in control of it? Who's buying up the farmland to deliberately do this and push everyone to this kind of hideous agenda? It's people like Bill Gates. It's the insidious billionaire class that cannot stand you. Cannot stand you, which is why they are doing this. They are doing this in an evil rate. And that's why I consider someone like Bill Gates a terrorist compared to Palestine. Compared to Palestine. That everyone assumes that, oh, well, Hamas and terrorism and Palestine and Muslims and Arabs. Don't you think it's far worse that a global billionaire who has really no place of residence, we don't know anything about him, he's just like a nomad, has control over the world's food system? You don't think it's kind of nerve-wracking that he has controls on the patents of vaccines and told you to get injected? That he buys up the media airtime to lecture you about injecting yourself with this synthetic chemical that you have no idea about and you have to do it, otherwise you're considered a conspiracy nut or evil or malicious? You don't think that's sinister? You don't think that's a form of terrorism? Because that's what it sounds like to me. And I'm more fearful of that than I am of, Zoran Mondamni, the Muslim mayor of New York. Or Miss Rachel acknowledging Palestine, or any of the Arabs that just live in existence. I consider the billionaire class the biggest threat to humanity. And not a lot of people talk about this. Not a lot of people mention about this. But this is awful. It's awful because it's affecting you, whether you like it or not. It's injecting your food. It's injecting into animals. And that's their loophole, because animals can't consent. And if you consume beef that's occupied by Bill Gates owning these farms, then you're getting injected with this poison, and who knows what's going to happen to you. It's really just sick. Really just sick and twisted.